Welcome back. This is our third video. So far we've looked at king and pawn, we've looked at some king and rook. Now I want to look at some stupid endings with, some exception endings, because to me, I learn not the rules because there's thousands of endgame rules that are so irritating. I like learning the exceptions to the rules because if you know the exceptions, you understand the rule, and we can skip a few steps. So, in this position, black just needs one move. He just wants to queen his pawn, but sadly, it's white's move in the position, and we start off with queen b2. This pins the pawn. Now, I should never, after you've watched this video and you've practiced this some, see you ever mess this up. This happens very rarely, but, sometimes, like, if black has a king and pawn, and you guys are playing a rook in game, and you sacrifice your rook, you make a queen, he still has a pawn left, and it's getting close. You need to know some of these basic rules. If it's a rook pawn, and it's on the 7th, and the black king is underneath, it's very easy to draw if you're the defending side, because you just hide underneath the pawn as long as you don't have anything else, and you get stalemated. The white king has to be very close so that we can let him out, let him queen, and he gets mated anyway. That's with the H pawn. We'll see later there's exceptions with the bishop pawn. Every other pawn, the knight pawn, king, queen pawn, knight pawn, they will all work the same way as the queen pawn, as we're going to see. You pin it, and you wait to make progress, because in order to win, you're going to need white's king all the way down here to attack the pawn and take it, and then we just have a basic king and queen versus king checkmate. So notice the pattern. First I pin it, then he moves. I pin it, check, I attack the pawn, check. Notice now, after a few moves, some forcing checks, I have put the king underneath the pawn. That means he cannot push the pawn to queen it. So then, I bring my king a step closer. And we're going to repeat this process. Pin, check, attack, check. He's underneath, so we get closer. Pin, and then we get closer. Hopefully you see the pattern by now. Don't ever make the mistake of coming down and checking down here, because he's going to make a queen, blocking the check. Don't do this silliness. Check. I'm not quite sure why he did that, but, Check. King d4. And now king e3. Checkmate. So this first example emphasizes the actual theme and pattern of how you need to win the pawn and win this ending. So let's take a look at our next one, which is going to be this situation with the bishop's pawn, and I told you it's different. Now let's see why. Well, if we start our pinning method, black king moves, we pin, black king moves, we pin. Now, if black continues to make moves and doesn't know the trick, he loses. But there's a trick here that's very powerful. I want you to pause your video, take your time here, and see if you can figure out what the trick is. Okay? So the trick in this position is actually king a1, exclam. Because if the white queen takes the pawn, black's stalemated. So this is one of those very stupid positions. But you definitely need to know the trick. So going back here, remember, if it's a bishop pawn, you need to be able to get your king into the corner. That's why, when trying to win this ending, you want to try to block his king from getting to the corner. You want your queen on the short side in order to do that. But can't get it in this position. So king a1 is the strong move, but if black doesn't know it, you can actually play king b4. And even after he makes a queen, this shows another theme that if the king is so close, now in this position, you have a full move with black. But no move you can make can do anything to help you. There is no check that doesn't give up your queen and then lose on the next move. So if black does anything, or check, checkmate. Okay, now that covers it for what I wanted to talk about when black has a lone pawn. Let's look at another interesting position. Okay, first I'll say to remind you that black's pawn is going this way. Now, I want you to pause your video after I've asked the question, how do you evaluate this position? Is white winning? Is black winning? Or is this game a draw? And why would you say that? Okay, pause it, think about it. Alright, in this position, this is what's known as a fortress position. Because what I want you to notice is that the pawn will protect the rook. The rook is going to go back and forth to where it's protected by the pawn. He's going to go nowhere else. The king is going to constantly dance around the pawn, protecting it, which will protect the rook. The rook keeps white's king from ever getting close. So that means white's queen will be able to attack any of the 3 black pieces, but at no point in time can the queen alone make progress against this structure. Keep in mind, this only works when the pawn is on its initial square. If the pawn is anywhere else, the white queen will be able to get behind the pawn, forcing the king away. And eventually making the pawn move enough, white's king will win it, and then we'll have king and queen versus king and rook, which is a difficult ending to defend if you have the king and rook. Most people lose the rook almost immediately, and you lose. So, let's see how this will work. Say, white tries to go around, but he just keeps moving back and forth, and you can do this all day long. This was a key position I wanted to show you because sometimes you're able to trade down to sacrifice a piece in order to get an ending like this. And, the best your opponent can do after playing for 50 moves is admit that it's a draw and shake your hand. So I'm going to end this video here. I just wanted to show you some of these exception rules and some of these cool